On a stormy night, a single mother offered a small act of kindness to a stranger. She thought it ended there. But the next day, her entire life changed in a way she never imagined. What happened will stay with you forever. The rain had begun earlier than expected, starting as a soft drizzle and quickly turning into a relentless downpour that hammered against windows and flooded the narrow streets. By the time Clara stepped out of the grocery store after her shift, the world outside looked like a blurred watercolor painting. Streetlights melting into long streaks of gold, roofs dripping, cars slicing through puddles with impatient splashes. She stood under the store's awning for a moment, adjusting the straps of her worn-out bag, and exhaled a long breath that carried exhaustion, responsibility, and the quiet courage of someone who couldn't afford to slow down. Clara was a single mother, but the phrase barely captured the reality of her life. Every day felt like a race, against time, against bills, against doubt. She worked long hours at a job that paid little but kept the lights on. She cooked meals that stretched more than they satisfied, made repairs with tools she didn't know the names of, and fell asleep each night whispering promises to her daughter. Promises that tomorrow would be easier, that she was trying, that they were okay. Her car, old and noisy but reliable enough to trust, was parked at the far end of the lot. Inside, her 8-year-old daughter, Lily, was curled up on the back seat with a blanket patterned with faded stars. She had fallen asleep while waiting for Clara to finish work, trusting her mother with the innocent certainty only a child could have. Clara looked at her sleeping face and felt her heart soften. This little girl was her whole world, her reason to keep moving through every storm life threw at them. Clara started the engine and switched on the heater, rubbing her palms together for warmth. She glanced at the clock, 9:02 p.m. The roads were nearly empty, and most people were already home, sheltered from the harsh weather. She backed out carefully and turned onto Main Street, driving slowly because the rain was so thick it seemed like the sky itself had collapsed. Then, just a few blocks from the store, she saw him, an elderly man hunched forward, gripping a thin cane as if it were the only thing holding him upright. He walked painfully slow, each step a struggle against the rain and the cold. His clothes were soaked through, clinging to him like a second skin, and his frail frame shook with every gust of wind. Cars passed him without stopping, their headlights briefly illuminating his trembling silhouette before moving on. Clara's heart tightened. She thought of her own father, long gone but never forgotten. She thought of how easily someone like this man could be overlooked, ignored, unseen. Life moved too fast for some people, and too coldly. Without hesitation, Clara pulled over and lowered her window. "Sir," she called gently through the rain. "Are you all right? Do you need help?" The old man turned his head slowly, rainwater dripping from his white hair. His eyes were tired, almost defeated, but when he saw her face, kind, sincere, something flickered there, a spark of hope. "I'm trying to get home," he said, his voice trembling. "Bus isn't running. I don't think I can make it much farther." Claire didn't think twice. She switched off the engine, grabbed her umbrella, and hurried to his side. "Come on," she said softly. "Let me help you." She held his arm, steadying him as they walked toward the car. He tried to protest, to say he didn't want to trouble her, but Clara shook her head. "You're not a trouble," she assured him. "The storm is." Once inside the warm car, he exhaled a shaky breath, relief washing over him. Clara wrapped the spare blanket around his shoulders. Lily stirred at the sound of the door closing, blinked sleepily at the old man, and offered him a small smile before drifting back to sleep. As Clara drove, the old man, who introduced himself as Mr. Howard, spoke softly, his voice fragile but warm. He told her little bits of his life, enough for her to sense the loneliness between his words. He gave directions to his house, a small, aging property in a quiet neighborhood. When they arrived, he took her hand with surprising strength and whispered, "You brought more warmth tonight than the heater ever could." "Thank you." Clara smiled gently, not realizing that this simple act of kindness would ripple into something far greater the very next day. The next morning felt like any other, quiet, gray, and lingering softly after the storm. The rain had stopped, but the clouds still hung low as if the sky hadn't quite recovered from a long night. Clara woke before sunrise, as she always did, stretching her aching back and rubbing sleep from her eyes. She moved quietly through the small house, careful not to wake Lily, who was sprawled sideways across the bed they shared. There was a sense of normalcy in the air, the hum of the refrigerator, the faint smell of last night's leftover soup, the drip, drip, drip of water sliding from the roof into the metal bucket she kept for leaks she couldn't afford to fix. Clara's life was stitched together with small burdens like these, patches and band-aids, adjustments and sacrifices, but she carried them with the patient strength she'd learned from necessity. After helping Lily get ready for school, brushing her hair, buttoning her jacket, packing her lunch, Clara watched her daughter climb onto the school bus with a bright wave. Lily always tried to be cheerful for her mother, even when she sensed the weight Clara carried. That little girl had an old soul, wise in ways Clara couldn't explain. When Clara returned home, she changed into comfortable clothes and began tidying the living room, humming softly to herself. She didn't think about last night at all, not because she didn't care, but because she believed the moment had served its purpose. She had helped a man in need, and she hoped only that he had made it safely inside and slept in warmth. She wasn't expecting anything more, which was why the knock at the door nearly startled her into dropping the stack of folded laundry she was carrying. It was a steady, polite knock, neither urgent nor timid. Clara set the laundry on the couch, wiped her hands on her pants, and walked to the door. When she opened it, her breath caught. A man stood before her, well-dressed, mid-40s tall, with a seriousness in his face that was softened only by the gentle kindness in his eyes. He held a folder under one arm and carried the kind of presence that suggested purpose, not coincidence. "Are you Clara?" he asked. Clara nodded slowly. "Yes, can I help you?" He took a breath, as though steadying himself. "My name is Daniel. I'm Mr. Howard's grandson." Clara's heart dropped. Fear slipped into her voice. "Is he okay? Did something happen?" Daniel lifted a hand. "He's all right. Please don't worry." Relief washed over Clara, so suddenly she had to hold the doorframe to steady herself. Daniel continued, "He asked me to come see you. After what you did last night, he's been talking about you nonstop." Clara frowned gently, unsure how comforting a stranger in the rain could mean so much. "I just didn't want him walking alone. It was cold and dangerous. Anyone would have helped." Daniel shook his head softly. "No," he said, "most people wouldn't. And that's exactly what he told me." He reached into the folder and handed her a small envelope. Clara opened it carefully. Inside was a handwritten note, shaky but heartfelt. "Thank you for reminding me that the world still holds kindness. You gave me a peace I haven't felt in years." Clara felt her eyes sting as she pressed a hand to her chest. But then Daniel gently pushed the folder toward her. "My grandfather insisted you receive this." Clara opened it, and the world seemed to tilt. Inside were official papers, legal documents, a property deed. She blinked rapidly, trying to understand what she was seeing. Daniel explained softly, "My grandfather owns several rental homes. This one is now yours, fully paid, signed over this morning." Clara's voice cracked. I can't accept this. This is too much." "It's done," Daniel replied. He said that any woman who stops her car in a storm to help a stranger deserves a place she doesn't have to fight for. Clara swallowed hard, tears streaming silently. She thought of all the nights she stayed awake praying for stability. She thought of Lily growing up without security. She thought of every hardship, every fear, every moment she wondered how much longer she could stretch her strength. And here, because of one simple act of kindness, her entire world was shifting. Daniel's voice softened even more. "My grandfather told me he hasn't felt hopeful in a long time. But last night, you restored something in him. A trust he thought he had lost forever." Clara clutched the papers to her chest, overwhelmed by emotion. She wanted to laugh, cry, collapse, and hug someone all at once. "Please tell him thank you." "I don't know how to even begin to thank him." Daniel nodded. "He doesn't want repayment. He said your kindness repaid him already." As the door closed and Clara stood alone in her small living room, the weight of the gift settled into her soul. All she had done was offer warmth on a cold night. And somehow, that warmth had returned to her 100-fold. Clara could hardly sleep that night. The deed sat on the table beside her, its crisp edges illuminated by the faint glow of the tiny lamp that struggled to brighten the room. She kept reaching for it, touching it gently, as if afraid it might disappear if she blinked too long. Beside her, Lily slept peacefully, her tiny hand resting on her mother's arm. Every so often, Clara would look at her daughter and feel a new wave of emotion rise inside her: gratitude, disbelief, hope. Morning arrived slowly, its golden light seeping through the curtains like a promise. Clara awoke with a mix of excitement and nerves dancing in her chest. Today, she would see the house that was hers, the house she hadn't asked for, hadn't expected, and yet had been given because of a single moment of compassion. She helped Lily get dressed, tie her shoelaces while Lily swung her feet playfully. "Mama," the little girl asked, "why are you smiling so much today?" Clara paused, touched her daughter's cheek, and whispered, "Because something good is happening, sweetheart. Something really good." After dropping Lily off at school, Clara met Daniel outside a small coffee shop. The air was crisp, and a few lingering puddles from the storm reflected the morning sunlight. Daniel greeted her with a kind smile and motioned toward his car. "Ready to see a new home?" Clara nodded, though her hands trembled slightly. I still feel like this is a dream." "I know," Daniel said gently. "My grandfather felt the same way last night." He kept repeating, "I finally met someone who sees people." He wanted you to have stability, to feel safe. They drove through quiet neighborhoods until they reached a small, tree-lined street. The house stood near the end, a modest little place with a blue door, white shutters, and a yard that needed a bit of love. The roof showed signs of age, the paint had faded in places, and the grass was uneven, but it had a warmth to it, a quiet charm that made it feel alive. Clara stepped out of the car and stood still for a moment, absorbing everything. This is really mine," she whispered. "All yours," Daniel confirmed. "Free and clear." Clara approached the front door slowly, as if approaching something sacred. Her hand shook when she reached for the knob. When the door opened, the scent of old wood and sunlit dust greeted her. The floors creaked slightly under her step. The windows let in generous streams of light. It wasn't grand. It wasn't perfect, but it was safe. It was hers, and that made it extraordinary. She walked from room to room, tracing her fingers along the walls, imagining fresh paint, curtains, Lily's laughter bouncing through the hallway. She imagined birthdays, holidays, late-night cuddles. She imagined coming home to something she didn't fear losing. Her eyes filled with tears. "This house," she turned to Daniel, "it feels like hope." Daniel smiled softly. "That's exactly what my grandfather wanted you to feel." They ended the tour in the small backyard. Overgrown bushes leaned against the fence, and a rusty swing set sat tilted to one side. But Clara didn't see the imperfections. She saw possibilities. A garden she could grow, a space for Lily to run, a corner for a tiny table where she could sip her morning coffee. Suddenly, Clara felt a warmth spreading through her chest, not the fragile kind that came and went, but a steady, grounding warmth that made her feel rooted for the first time in years. She took a deep breath, steady and full. "I want to meet him," she said softly. "I want to say thank you in person." Daniel nodded. He would love that. Later that afternoon, they visited Mr. Howard. He sat in his cozy living room wrapped in a knitted blanket. When he saw Clara, his eyes brightened with recognition. "You came," he whispered. Clara kneeled beside him and took his hand. "I needed to. Thank you for giving me something I didn't even know how to hope for." "Mister," Howard's eyes glistened. "You gave me something first," he replied. "You gave me the reminder that kindness still lives. I only return what you already carry in your heart." Clara felt tears spill again, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming realization that kindness truly travels in circles. She squeezed his hand. "I won't waste this gift." And she meant it, with every breath in her body. As she left that day, with the keys to her new home in her hand and gratitude swelling in her chest, Clara realized something. Sometimes, life changes not through grand gestures or miracles, but through quiet, human moments. Moments where someone chooses to stop, to see, to care. And when kindness is given freely, it often returns home in ways more beautiful than anyone could imagine. One simple act of kindness can create a ripple that returns to us in ways we never expect. When we choose to help someone without asking anything in return, we plant seeds of goodness that eventually come back, softer, brighter, and far greater than what we gave. Clara stepped into her new home not as someone who had been rescued, but as someone who had been seen. She learned that true kindness doesn't disappear into the world. It circles back when we need it most. And as she watched Lily run to the front yard, laughter filling the air, Clara finally understood. When you give from the heart, life always finds a way to give back.